Hello, beautiful product people. Welcome to this week's Product School Talk. I'm really excited about today. Thanks everyone for joining us. So a little bit about us. We at Product School teach product management, coding, data analytics, and blockchain at all 14 of our campuses worldwide. We have an awesome, amazing guest presenting today. I love his spirit and his attitude, and I'm super excited to learn more from him. I'd like to introduce Chris Gallello. Chris is the designer and founder of Purple.pm, a collaboration tool for designers and product managers to plan and share projects. And prior to that, he was a product manager at Microsoft and Imgur. On the side, he created UX Check Forbes' top pick of Chrome extensions for designers in 2016. He also runs Roomscale.design, a meetup series for VR designers, and is the creator of Kitten Cannon VR. So nothing short of amazing. Welcome, Chris. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Hey, thank you so much.
All right. Wonderful. So as Chris is setting up, I just want to let everyone know that as we are going through our talk today, if you have any questions or comments that you want addressed at the end, we do our best to address them. So just stick in any questions or comments you have into the comment section, and we'll be picking those for the end. So Chris, if you want to share your screen, perfect.
Yes, sounds good.
Thank you.
All right. All right, do you see that just fine?
Yes.
Awesome. Alrighty, well, yeah, thank you everybody for joining. I'm excited about this this talk because I love design, but I'm also kind of at heart a product manager as well, and I think it's just an interesting subject to kind of learn how to be a good product manager when you're specifically working on design related projects. Like what is going to be the split? Where can you help? Where can you provide the most value when you're working with designers? So it's a subject that I particularly love, and yeah, I'm excited to go through it. I guess, yeah, you've heard my background, Microsoft and Imgur as a product manager there, especially as Imgur, I was their first PM, so it was heads on fire the whole time, running around, working on all sorts of different products, which was very fun. Yeah, currently the founder of Purple. We're building a tool that makes it easy for designers and product managers alike to plan projects, specifically when building features and creating software. So, by the way, if if you don't get your question answered today or anything, my email is chris@purple.pm. Feel free to email me. Happy to answer. And also, I'm pretty active on Twitter. I think it's a very fun place to have interesting discussions around product management, design, and all that kind of stuff. All right, yeah, so what I want to discuss today is kind of 3 moments that you should be thinking about as a product manager when you're working on a design-related project. And these are 3 moments that you want to drive forward. So as a designer, the designer is going to be focused on they need to create the designs, and they need to get all the designs detailed out and that kind of stuff. And they may also think about talking to users, that kind of stuff. But where I believe product managers can help the most when it comes to a design process is driving user input, making sure that reviews happen in a timely manner and are kind of like it's a catalyst for making sure that all the designs are being done, all the processes being followed. And then finally, actually getting the product out the door. And there's part of that where the designers need to sign off and all that kind of stuff. And you as a product manager can help with that process. So I'll go through a little bit about how kind of what this looks like in different stories. But first, of course, it's a linear process where when you're creating a feature, you might need to get user input, and then you actually have some creation period where you're creating designs, and then you get it reviewed, and then you actually the developers go and develop it, and then you ship the product. And of course there's kind of that loop back after shipping, you get more user input, yada yada. But when it comes to actually like all the things that you have to do in the design process, like depends on how you and your designer split things up. Some product managers are very hands-on with the design process, and some are very hands-off. But regardless, between the two of you, there's a lot of stuff that you guys need to do. And it gets very, very messy. But at the end of the day, really what counts is these things like usability testing, user research, customer support chat. Like actually talking to users is so important, and getting things reviewed, spec reviews, getting sign off, design reviews, those are super important. And then finally, actually deploying the feature and the product. Again, the final like important step. And really everything else across this is all supporting tasks. So you need to set up your work such that all those supporting tasks get done, but like don't waste your time on them, because they all lead up to making sure that you are talking to users and getting things reviewed, and then deploying out your product. So when it comes to different ways that you could help out getting user input, so obviously there's the traditional, let's do usability testing and user research, that kind of stuff, and you can help with that certainly. But so for example, when I was working on Office Online at Microsoft, so that's like Word Online, Excel Online, for part of my time, I worked on making sure that the product would be accessible by blind users. So how do blind users use this app, and how do they navigate around, and how does it work with screen readers, all that kind of stuff. And part of our process was to do some usability testing with actual blind folks. But another thing that I did, which is a little bit more unique in terms of getting user input, was I kind of played a little bit more of a PR role as well. And so I went down to a conference in San Diego. It's the biggest accessibility technology conference in the world. And we had a Microsoft booth, and I kind of was representing their, the Office Online team. And it was great. We had these nice chairs where people could sit down and hang out. And I was able to engage with the broader community really, really well there, and really hear what's important to them. And in addition to this, we had this booth, of course, but we also had meetings set up with, different accessibility advocacy groups. So I was kind of playing point person on behalf of Microsoft when talking to them, and they would, of course, push specific features that they thought were important for us, and we would take those as suggestion. And so that was kind of like a little bit more of a unique way of getting user input that PMs are a little bit more equipped for. Even though PR is not necessarily under the role of PM, it's you do need the skill sets to do both. So the same skill sets a little bit. So that happened to work out very well. Some other ways to, as a product manager, ways that you can help throughout this process, let's say you are setting up a usability test. Like when I was at Imgur, I was running a usability test, and, there's so many things that, tasks that need to be done, like setting up a Craigslist ad to find usability testing participants. And, that kind of thing is like product managers know how to do that kind of thing, and they're able to do that. Like small little tasks that are very, very different from each other and all require coordination, like that's the prime candidate of work for a product manager. And so, any small thing that we need to be done, like setting these up and collecting gift cards from Amazon and coordinating schedules with all the participants and all that kind of stuff, product managers can absolutely help out on. Another thing is with Purple. So this is like you'll see Purple in the background. I'll show a little bit later, but basically within Purple, once you sign up, you get a message from me saying, hey, let me know if you have any questions. And so we use Intercom to allow our users to chat directly with me. And kind of in playing product manager here, it's very, very easy to just immediately get feedback from people. And we actually use the input that we get from Intercom quite a bit. And not from Intercom, but from our users through Intercom. We use it quite a bit to figure out our roadmap and everything. This is what it looks like from our end, the chat experience, I guess. It doesn't matter what product you use. If you are setting up a new product, there's Drift and Intercom, and I forget some other ones, but they're all great. Just actually engaging with users through a customer chat is fantastic. InVision Studio and then Principal, these two are design tools that are in the design community right now, fairly new, and both of these companies have set up Facebook groups in order to collect feedback, have people report bugs, have people even share community creations, all that kind of stuff. It's a great way of kind of creating and establishing a community, but also getting that user input that's so important. And I did the same thing when I was at Imgur, and I worked on the Imgur Android app. We had at the time, it was a Google Plus community in order to get feedback on our Android beta. So really helpful ways of, getting user input in a little bit more of the non-traditional manner. All right, so the next thing is about reviews. And I think reviews are one of those things where people might look at me funny and be like, why do you love reviews so much? And so I do want to explain that a little bit. Specifically for design, design is something where it's easy to get complacent and have a really shitty design process. Like you can be very lazy with it and still end up with an okay product. But in order to have a really solid process, you need to have good documentation. You need to talk to a lot of users. You need to make sure that you're thinking about all of the input that all of your users had for you in the right way. And so the reason I like reviews so much and focusing on reviews rather than focusing on the design process is because in order to have a good, rigorous design process, you need to make sure that other people agree that you're having a rigorous design process. And so if you can't convince them, if you can't convince your team that you're following a great, top-notch professional process, then you probably need to go back and improve your process. And so that's why I think it's so important. It's because it is so easy to get lazy with design. So when I first joined Imgur, one of my first meetings was with a designer and the CEO. And the designer was presenting a bunch of wireframes for a mobile website refresh. Basically, we were updating the mobile website. This is the final. You see it looks quite nice. He basically just started jumping in and showing the CEO, okay, I've been working on some wireframes and here's the new designs. And then the CEO was like, oh, hold up, actually, I'm sorry. I'm so busy. I don't really remember what's going on here. Like, why are we even doing this? Why is this an important project for us right now? Could you just quickly refresh? And the designers that I was with, like, he wasn't really able to explain clearly, concisely, here's really why we're doing this project. And so that was a moment to me where I was like, okay, it sounds like we need to just, not necessarily go back to step one, but at least just recap the process that we've gone through so far. And so I recommended, hey, let's put this meeting on hold and come back in a few days or maybe tomorrow or something like that. And we'll have this hashed out for you. And so the designer and I sat down separately and I basically asked him like these three things. Hey, what are the original goals that you've had for this project? Who are the target users in your mind? And then what are the scenarios that we need to optimize for that we haven't really done well with in the past with our current mobile website? And so I put this into a slide deck, and then put the wireframes after this, after these slides, and then we went back to the CEO and presented this to him, and it was just much smoother. The CEO was able to understand, oh, okay, you did do the thinking ahead of time of like, why are we doing this? And there is thinking behind these design decisions. So it was very helpful for him to see it all laid out there. So that was kind of a big moment for me to realize like, oh, reviews can really be a big help here to make sure that people are, designers are following a rock solid process. And a few other things about booking reviews or about working with reviews. So one of the things that I like to do as a product manager, and this depends on your style, but it works well for me. I like to book spec reviews well in advance, even if I have no idea how complex this project will be. So when you're writing a spec, like it can be anywhere from 1 page to like, you might end up with a 20-page spec if you're working on some crazy complex feature. And the reason I would book these in advance is it allows me or it forces me to like, okay, I have 3 weeks to get the spec done. I'm going to go do it. And it really pushes me to get these specs done in a timely manner. And by the way, like nobody ever complains about meetings that are canceled. Like everybody loves meetings that are canceled last minute. And so if you do need to cancel one of these meetings, that's okay. Like if you aren't able to hit that deadline that you've set for yourself, nobody's going to hit you over the head for it. Just book it out for another week or two, and you'll be fine. So it was a wonderful way of making sure that things were happening in a timely manner for me. The next thing is making sure that anytime I would hold a review, I would try to open it up to anybody who would want to join, whether it's people who are just purely interested in what we're doing, or people who felt like they had a strong opinion, or they could be valuable in terms of input. When I was at Microsoft, we had this email alias where um, we would send out all of our spec review invites, the calendar invites, to that email alias, and that had everybody on the team: engineers, testers, PMs, designers, marketing folks, really anyone. And you were expected to only accept the invites that you thought were particularly interesting to you, or you thought you could contribute. And that was a really wonderful way of going about it. And I actually brought that process to Imgur. So anytime I would book a review, everybody in the company would get it. That was very, very helpful. And then the last thing is that people really do care about the process. Again, this kind of goes back to that example of the mobile website redesign. Don't just show the designs that are being created in the final spec. Walk people through the process just a little bit. I mean, don't make it a centerpiece, but people do want to see, how did you make some design decisions? What kind of evidence do you have that support your conclusions? All those kinds of things are actually very helpful. So be sure to include those things. You'll find that it's just much easier to get buy-in from everybody when you do that. So that's why I like reviews. They're a good forcing function to make sure you're actually following a solid process. And then the last thing that again can be particularly tricky is shipping. And this is where product managers can make really tough decisions. So when I first joined Imgur, again, one of my other first meetings was with the Android team plus the CEO. And the Android team was like, yeah, we think we're about ready to go. Maybe we'll be able to ship it in a week or two. And CEO was like, awesome, that's great. And so of course, me being the product manager, I was like, oh, cool. Well, I'd love to try it out and see, how it works. And across the board, I actually found a lot of design bugs. A design bug is basically, you log it as a bug, but it's not a functional bug. It's not a coding issue. It's a design problem, and you need to change some design. And so with that, I created an Excel spreadsheet or a Google sheet of all of those design bugs, little issues that we had that would just make the experience usable but frustrating to use. And so I logged those down and sat down with the team and figured out, okay, you know what? And I told the CEO and I sent him the spreadsheet. I said, hey, looks like we're going to actually have to push back by 2 months. And that was a particular decision that I had to make that was tough because it's tough sometimes to let design influence design issues influence a product roadmap release kind of thing. But it was important in that case to make sure that we shipped a very nice polished product on, as our V1. It was our first big revamp since they built an Android app 3 or 4 years prior, and this was a big release. So we decided to delay it. Another example was with Purple. So when I first designed Purple, again, you saw there's a bunch of cards side by side, and you can basically, originally, you would hover down on this plus button in the bottom right, and then create a card type in order to insert it. And with Purple, you have all sorts of different card types: lists, text, images, all these plugins, all these integrations. And so you see that when you click on that, that list card button, for example, it just adds it at the end of the project. And it looks nice, it made sense. But when we first started having people using very complex projects, they realized they need to be able to insert cards towards the beginning of the project. And so I redesigned it such that there's a plus button at the end of the project there. So there's that, you just click on that plus button and then you insert a card. But then you can also hover over a plus button in between two cards or at the beginning of the project. And then the cards slide over and then you can insert a card there. And when we did usability testing for it, it turns out that people liked it once they learned about it, but it was hard for people to learn about it. And so I thought, okay, great. I'll just, if we just put in a tooltip here that says add a card by clicking here, and that'll be great, whatever. Now, at the time, our users were complaining about this fact that we didn't have the ability to create cards in between, and users were having to drag cards over after they create them. So what we had to do was create this tooltip, but turns out we didn't have a tooltip framework built into the app yet. This was very early days. And between all the trigger logic and analytics that we had to build and all sorts of stuff just in building this small tooltip, it turns out it would have been a week and a half of work just to build this in. And so that was where I made a kind of decision. I put my product manager hat on and made a decision, you know what? we're not going to create that tooltip right now. We're going to send a intercom message to any of our existing users showing people with a GIF, here's how to insert a card in between two cards. And so even if the users didn't read this whole message, just the fact that they saw that GIF running was just good enough for me. As long as people could see that those cards would slide over and there is a way to insert cards now, that that would be mission accomplished. And so that was kind of a decision that I had to make between, shipping the beautiful design or the well polished design that is guaranteed to work versus what, due to engineering constraints, we need to go with something a little bit less polished and a little bit more hacky. But I'm really glad that we did that. And we actually now, if you sign up for the product, you will see that tooltip now. We did build that later on, and I'm glad we did it in that sequence. All right. So if we kind of put this all together, I think it's always really fun to show actual projects that I'm currently working on. So I'm going to show you how we've planned out this project called Google Drive Import. Of course, we plan all of our features for Purple in Purple, a little meta there, but very helpful. And so with Google Drive Import, the concept is basically, in Purple right now, you can create Google Docs cards. So like this is a Google Sheet that I have like fully embedded into the project right here, and that's very helpful. So people can embed their Google Docs. But one thing is that we want people to, once they sign up, we want them to really get going with Purple as fast as possible, which means showing them a project where they have all of their work in Purple, like as soon as possible. And so we realized, oh, it'd be nice if you could just select a folder in Google Drive and then have Purple import that folder entirely into your project. So we thought that might be actually pretty nice. So that's what we're building. The way we have it kind of split up here, I have like a reviews card to keep track of which reviews we have done for this project. But then I'll have product section where I have goals and possible feature directions. There's a product V1 section, we call these phases, where you have the design, the spec, and I actually have a survey feedback here. But then we pivoted and did a little bit of a different set of designs. We changed it, so I have a new set of designs, a Marvel prototype, the actual spec, and some other documentation that we needed here. And then we have engineering, testing, and release notes and future concepts. So when it comes to actually, getting started, actually, I'll show this review section first. So you see, like, we've done a design review for the spec review, engineering review, fit and finish review. We still need to release this feature. So you're seeing, the stuff you're seeing, by the way, is not released. So hopefully that's interesting and cool. But yeah, we have this release section and then postmortem review. We'll do those soon. But yeah, so I start out with like laying out our goals here. So get a user to wow as fast as possible. And that happens when they see their own work in Purple. And then we have a few other goals as well. I laid out a bunch of feature directions. And now you see we have a new phase here. And anytime after one of these phases, I'll have a review with the team. So I put together these goals and the feature directions, and then I had a team review. I should turn off those notifications, actually. Anyway, so we have a review here, and then then there's the product section, V1, and I won't go through this in depth, but I'll show you kind of the second iteration, where after we had this that other review. So here we have my actual sketch file where I created the designs and have it laid out in a way that shows all of the different states for the engineering team. I then have a prototype, so my team can actually play with it and click through it as they're looking through the spec. And then we actually have the V2 spec here. Now, in terms of the way I organize my spec, I find that having a new terminology section at the top is very helpful. Sometimes I'll actually provide full definitions. That way my team knows full well exactly what everything means before they jump into the details. I then go through, here's how users are expected, or how we expect users to use this feature. I'll then also have all the details on how the feature works and all the different edge cases and file type support and what happens if a user selects a ton of files, all that kind of stuff. I have a few engineering considerations that I think, hey, we should be sure to prototype this stuff. Here's some backend changes that we might need. Then analytics, and then just other considerations like how does this affect onboarding, and what if multiple people are using the project at the same time, all that kind of stuff. So that's how I do my specs. I then have like a privacy policy section where we had to update the privacy policy for this. And then we have the actual engineering plan and all the engineering estimates. So again, this is a Google sheet with all the hours for these tasks. And yeah, so far we've actually, we've tested everything that we have checked off all these things. So we've tested it all, and it's pretty much ready to go for release. We're just waiting on a few other small features to get in, and we'll be getting this out the door soon. So that's kind of how we plan all this stuff. And then what's helpful is that we also, I actually base all of my projects off of this project template that I have for my team, where, I mean, it's basically everything that I showed you, where we have the reviews, product, engineering, testing, that kind of stuff. And then for the spec section, I have like headings with a bunch of questions that I ask myself when I'm filling out the spec section. So that's kind of how I do all that stuff. So yeah, that hopefully gives you a little bit of insight in terms of how, how do we plan stuff at Purple throughout, when we're designing a feature and iterating, all that kind of stuff. That was obviously just one example of how we've designed stuff. We've done all sorts of other processes, but hopefully it's, helpful to see that and fun to see that. So yeah. All righty, back to this. But yeah, so again, hopefully, you're able to see there how, user input, for that project specifically, we did a survey rather than usability testing. At the end of each phase, we have a reviews section, or we don't have a review section. We just do a review at the end of each phase, and ultimately, we're driving home towards that shipping, and that's goal number one is get whatever you design out the door. So yeah, hopefully that was helpful. Again, if you have any questions, I guess I can answer now. Plus, add me on Twitter and I'll respond there. Purple's in a free public beta, so if you go to Purple.pm, I'd love to try it out for a project. Let me know how it is. Send me any feedback, and of course, all that user input from Intercom will be great. But yeah, that's about it. Thank you so much for listening in, and yeah, looking forward to any questions.
Okay. Oh my gosh, amazing, Chris. I can't get over that. I mean, not only your experiences and everything you've designed, and you're so low key about it. You're like, yeah, it was just me with the CEO and this, and I had to push it back 2 months, and that must have been a major decision. And also with Purple, I'm drooling over it. It's a PM platform that also teaches you too, like that template you showed. Because we all have our own processes, but even those questions, sometimes we all just get caught up in the whirlwind and we don't notice certain questions. I think it's so cool that you're sharing
when we ship the templates feature, where it'll be like duplicating projects. When we ship that, I'll also share that template that I showed of how we plan projects, and anybody, I'll probably post it on Twitter or something. But yeah.
I know, I'm definitely going to follow you on Twitter. That's a must.
Cool.
So we do have some questions from the audience that I want to address. Everyone's saying, hi, hello, amazing, all the things.
Oh, thank
a lot
you.
of hearts and likes. So Yigar asks, design thinking / outside in design info, please, he says. So
sorry, could you repeat the question?
Just design thinking and outside in design info, please, at the end when you mentioned design thinking in the beginning. So I'm not.
And kind of how does design thinking work in general, or?
Yeah, just more info, I guess. He just wanted to expand on that just for a sentence or two. Yeah.
Yeah, good question. So I guess, yeah, with design thinking, the philosophy of design thinking is very much like really get ingrained with the user and how they think and their lifestyle and the problems that they have, and work with them to address the problem and figure out some solutions for them, but also involve them in that process of creating the solutions. It's something that I was educated in through college, but so I've been doing it for a while, and really, it takes a lot of practice. Like there are courses out there that you can take specifically for design thinking. There's some online courses plus in-person courses that you can take. But at the end of the day, my biggest recommendation is practice it over and over. It is important for a product manager. You don't need to be an expert, but it is important to understand that process. So be sure to at least study up on it. And again, the most important thing, once again, is just iterating and running through that process over and over, and keep designing theoretical features and working with real users, all that kind of stuff. So hopefully that answered the question.
Yes, that's great. And I think that answers another question that someone else had about that as well. So Someone asked, we get this one a lot. What is your favorite book in product management, which every PM should read?
Good
And then
question.
at Product School, our CEO wrote a book too, so you can find that on our website. And if you
That's
type
right.
in book to the comments, then you should get a book. So, but I want to hear, Chris, what have been, are
Good
you a
question.
reader? Do you like having, is there a book that kind of,
Yeah, I don't like product management books, and I don't like business books in general. Like books that walk you through a specific process that you need to learn, that kind of stuff. And I think part of that is that um, it's like this is a weird analogy, but I grew up playing Roller Coaster Tycoon. And then the first time I got on a roller coaster, it was just wildly different from what I expected. It was so much scarier. And I think part of it is that with product management, you kind of have to just do it. And so the younger folks who I look up to the most in terms of, hey, you're doing a good job with the early part of your career, they're doing lots of side projects and actually building stuff. And not necessarily them coding, but working with developers to build something. And I think that can be more valuable, I guess, than reading war stories. That being said, I will say that maybe the one that has influenced me the most is Creativity Inc. By Ed Catmull, a story about Pixar. And so it's not a product management book.
Mhm.
It is a little bit of a business book, but what I like about it is that you get these great lessons without being specific about one field. I mean, it's about creating movies, which is so different, and yet you can still learn some of the same basic principles, or you still use some of the basic principles. So
I love it.
I will throw my star on that one, but also I would recommend focus your time on just building stuff.
Yeah, and keeping the passion alive. Like you said,
Keep
having
it, yeah,
multiple projects going, failing and
yeah.
succeeding, failing 10 more times,
Oh
and
yeah, with UX
keep figuring
Check,
it out.
with UX Check, I built that on the side when I was at Microsoft. It took me 4 months to build it, and I would invite my friends over every other Monday for dinner, and I would tell them, "Hey, I'm gonna feed you, and then you're gonna give me feedback on my project, and like keep me going." And that was so important. I absolutely wouldn't have been able to finish that project if it weren't for my friends rooting me along. So
I
find those
love that.
friends.
I love that. Feed and feedback
Yeah.
night. Okay, well, we have time for maybe two more. So let's see. How do you weigh the importance of edge cases into the product slash feature? They're edge cases, but they seem to cause really vocal frustration from users. Dot dot dot.
Yeah, that's super tough actually. Okay, so I guess there's a few different things that you need to think about. One is what percentage of your users do you expect will run into this problem? And so that's kind of like the overall impact. Then you also need to think about the severity. So when the user hits this problem, is it going to stop them from using the product altogether? Is it going to cause a minor frustration that will build up over time and then cause them to be vocal? Or is it something that, is just kind of silly looking? So that's another category of things to think about. A third category of things that I like to keep separate is, does this make us look like idiots? Like, does this really just make us look like we don't know how to develop software? There are classes of bugs like that, and it's important to make sure that users never see those types of things. Um, and then I guess the last thing is, what types of users will run into this bug? So if it's the type of user who is a free user, who you don't care about having a terrible experience, maybe it's okay to let it go. But if it's, your top paying customer who's running into this bug every so often, then yeah, unfortunately, you might need to fix that. So I don't have like the, y equals mx plus b of all those four variables. You kind of have to just like grow this intuition over time. But those are I would say the four things that I do think about when it comes to prioritizing bugs.
That's so good. Okay, I have a lot of questions here, but two more that I really like. This one asks about how would you implement usability testing or reviews in projects with a strict short deadline? So, how do you implement usability testing with a strict short deadline? I think that's a question we all have. Like, we want to launch this, but we
Yeah,
need reviews. So, how do we jam pack it in?
I had to cut this out because because of time, but I'm just going to show it anyways.
Okay, yeah,
When it
sure.
comes to user research and usability testing, I like doing like maybe a quarterly cadence of user research. This is stuff that is like just talking to the user outside of them using the product, and then like I'll need to look across the team to figure out when are the right times to play in usability tests. And so you kind of do want to come up with a regular cadence, but you also want to make sure you work with all the designers and understand when are the different features coming in. Like, are some features coming in hot? Are some features going to be early? And you kind of need to plan accordingly. When it comes to a specifically short project, if you do feel like you really need usability testing for this short project, honestly, I recommend just being creative. So with the mobile web redesign, for example, that I was talking about, so Imgur, the employees at Imgur are all users. Like, we're all very active users of the product. And so there are times where we are able to just ask everybody in the company. And so for that project specifically, me and the designer set up, and we sent a Slack message to everybody saying, hey, we're going to be in the lobby for the next 30 minutes. Come join us, hang out, and we want to get your input on 2 different directions that we could go with. And so that was one of those cases where we needed a fast turnaround. We just had to do it on the spot. But still, it's important to get, just other brains giving their input into the project. So be creative, do some guerrilla stuff. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Okay. And then there's a lot more, but like Chris said, you can reach out on Twitter, reach out to us. We can maybe even have you again on the channel. I think that would be amazing as well.
Happy to. Yeah.
So do you think that Purple will be a consideration other than AHA and other platforms like that?
Oh, that's a good question. So AHA does a lot of like road mapping and planning timelines, all that kind of stuff. Purple is a lot more of making sure that all the documentation and planning work is in one place. So at least as a team, you're able to work cohesively together as opposed to a bunch of separate silos. So we don't do that timeline planning kind of stuff right now. So I would recommend giving it a go, in conjunction with any other of those types of project management tools.
Yeah, it seems great. Like I said, I was drooling over it when you were sharing it. I was like, this is game changing.
And by the way, the current, what I showed, by the way, is that was the unreleased version where
yes,
we do have some
I
prettier
understand.
visuals,
Yes.
that kind of stuff. This will be coming pretty soon. So yeah.
No, it's fun. I don't think anyone on our channel has ever shared like a sneak peek into anything that truly. We do have a sneak peek series, but nothing like this, like something that hasn't been launched yet. So
I think it's fun for people to see, like, stuff that hasn't been launched and the real meat behind this.
Totally. And then yes, so much more fun to see it. And anticipation, we're like, ooh, we know a little bit more about this. And meeting you and your experiences kind of heightens my interest and already loyalty, I guess.
Well, thank you so much.
So yeah. Oh, thank you so much, Chris, for being on our channel today. We are very grateful that you were able to spend time and share so much and do all your sneak peek stuff. And thank you everyone for joining us today. We had over 70 people join us today and over 60 stay for the Q&A. So that's amazing rate. So anyways, yes, about Product School. To get more information on our courses and any upcoming events, go to productschool.com. We have, if you're located near one of our campuses, we have tons of events, weekly events every Wednesday and Thursday. And then we also do these webinars every Thursday. And Tuesdays, we do our Slack Ask Me Anything. So we're on Twitter, Facebook, all of that. Find us there. And I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. And Chris, I hope you come back quickly. I hope you come back.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, and Chris is located in San Francisco. So for any events coming up in the future, maybe you'll be able to do an in-person talk or something like that. So we'd love to have you. Oh, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Bye.
All right, bye everyone.